All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about 3D printing. It's going to be something slightly different than usual. Not the same thing that I do all the time, which is ZBrush and digital stuff and concept. Today we're going to actually take a concept or an idea into the real world. And we have a very special guest today, Ethan Cox. I will introduce him in just a second. So Ethan is, I'll bring in also a nice, let me just share the screen as well. Just so you know who I'm talking about. All right, let me know if you can see the screen as well.
Good.
Cool. Yeah, so this is the Become a Miniature. So Ethan Cox is from the Last Hole Games, and this is kind of like one of his recent projects. Is really, really cool. And the whole idea is that you can become a miniature. So you can upload, I think now you can upload a video. So you just record a video on different angles. And that video is enough to kind of like create a 3D scan. And then you just put your own face in this. The cool thing is that you can customize it in any way you want. So you can just change the hairstyle. And it has this really nice sort of like preview on the web, like 3D. So that's basically what Ethan does. That's his one part of his business is just to turn a 3D scan or a video into a miniature, obviously 3D printed. So it's really, really cool idea. I'll encourage you to just have a look at it. I'll ask Eman to share it in the different chats so that you can check it out. But yeah, that's the idea, and this is why I wanted to bring in Ethan today to basically cover kind of like what we're going to be doing today, which is a little bit of the process of 3D printing, because he's an expert. He does this, I think, on a daily basis. So he will be able to answer any question that you might have, give you some tips and tricks as well. And the reason I wanted to also create this space, kind of like a chill session, is because I wanted to target anyone that is wanted to get into 3D printing, but somehow hasn't. Just to kind of like demystify a little bit of the process. I myself done a few 3D printers in my time, but you know, I'm not an expert. So you know, if you have any questions, if you're new to the whole thing, please don't be shy. Ask questions. Ethan is gonna give us a good rundown on what to do. Now, before I bring in Ethan and let him take it away, I just want to show you kind of like what we set up. Just to give you an idea what we can use as a demo for today's session. So this is a simple crab that I created in 3D Modeler. So the whole thing is blocked out in 3D Modeler, very simple shapes, primitives, and then I kind of like merge or combine everything together. This is still 3D Modeler, and I was doing this as a kind of like a practice for organic stuff in 3D Modeler. And then I sent it to ZBrush. I detailed the crab, so I used some of my custom brushes and, you know, just added a little bit of detail, then sent it to 3D Painter and created these textures for this guy. But in the meantime, when I was setting up the textures for the crab, I took the model that I got from ZBrush, which, by the way, it has exactly the same topology as I exported from 3D Modeler. So that's one of the things that I wanted to try with this project. So I exported everything for 3D Modeler. I used exactly the same base mesh. I just detailed it in ZBrush, and I export that and I send it to Ethan. And in the meantime, I was working on the textures. And when I finished with the textures, Ethan also finished with the 3D print. So this is the little guy. You know, it fits in your hand, but you see all the details and everything. So the cool thing that I want to show you, and the reason I'm showing you this is because, you know, probably Ethan is going to tell you more about it, but I don't prepare my 3D prints or my models for 3D prints at all. They're a bit messy. So he has to go through the process of fixing it before you print it. But, you know, hopefully he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. Anyway, so that is me. Let me just hang on. I'm going to stop sharing now and see if Ethan is here already. Here we go. Hey, Ethan.
Hi, everyone. Morning.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for the introduction.
Awesome.
Yeah, so actually the print that we've done for the crab is actually one of the nicer, easy cleanups that Pablo sent through. There have been some in the past that have been a little difficult, but we'll go over why that is. And I'll show you sort of my process of fixing them up and making sure everything's sort of watertight. That's the main thing.
Would you be able to also give us a little tour later on the workshop? Because that's like to me is like this one of the most exciting things is to see all the stuff that you have already.
Yeah. So I mean, as you can see behind us, I've got a whole bunch of my prints sort of on the left here, and we'll get up close and we'll have a look at them later. But these are our 5 main printers that we've got. So we've got 3 frozen computers, an Anycubic, and 1 Apex Maker, which is the nice big one. So we've got our Frozen Mini, which even though it's got a very small base, it's exceptionally detailed. So it's got 22 micron capabilities, whereas the majority of the others only go down to I say 22, so they only go down to 50. So that's sort of the layer height and the detail that you can get from, how many layers you're able to do. So yeah, even though it's got a small print base, it's exceptionally high detail, and I love it. It's probably my favorite one. The Anycubic one here, exceptionally good, very fast for the detail that's able to offer. It's probably my main workhorse one, just because we have in the past damaged the other 2 and had to do replacements.
Right.
So before we had to do that, they were great. But, when you get replacement pieces, things aren't always perfect the way they're supposed to be. And then the Apex Maker is it's phenomenal. It's exceptionally good. So many cool little features, like it warms the vat for you. So like your resin stays at a consistent temperature, which can be an issue.
Is that the new one, like the recent sort of addition?
Yeah. So okay. At the ZBrush Summit, that's the one they had on display.
Right.
Like the big one that's going really fast. So yeah, it's exceptionally fast and still gives you pretty damn good detail for how fast it goes. And then we've got 2 Frozen Sonic Mega 8Ks. We've had those the longest, and they're sort of pretty grunty, good machines. Just we've had to do replacements on them because, we've pierced the FET during printing, and then resin's gotten onto the LCD screen. So that's why you always have a protective film over your screen, just to ensure when stuff like that happens, you're not having to replace like an entire LCD screen, because that sucks.
Right.
But yeah, those are our printers. I've actually just had a print finish on the yellow Anycubic over here. So we might be able to go through sort of my cleanup process from start to finish.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that sort of puts me off, to be honest. The cleanup.
Yeah. But we thankfully we have a lot of space, so we're able to have sort of these different stations to be able to work on the different components to cleaning up. But I mean, as long as you've got it planned out and okay, so this step, then that step, then that step, you give yourself enough space to be able to make it work, then you'll be fine.
I think that's something that maybe we can just go ahead and take notes, like step 1, step 2, and follow along.
Yeah. And I'll also go through sort of the extra tools that I use that I wish I had when I first started.
Nice.
These are things that, I've added to the collection as we've gone and as we've continued and gotten better and everything. But just quickly, I'll bring up.
Here we go. Here it is.
So he came out really well. I can go over how I orientated him in. Sorry, is it focused?
It was focusing before. Still out of focus a little bit. Nah, it's still out of focus. It's not recognizing him as a face.
Let me.
Onto the other
camera. So yeah, we'll go over how I orientated him for printing, and the mistake that I made that I always make. It's putting enough holes. So I only put 1 hole in there, so I had to smash through another hole, just for like pressure buildup and physics and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'll go over what causes that as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty detailed. That's the one you printed it in which one though?
I printed on the little guy, so at the 22 micron. So plenty of detail out of that. So this guy here.
Okay.
And I think that took about 9 or 10 hours.
Right.
So just at nighttime, come into the workshop, process it all, put it on, go home, sleep, come back in the morning, and it's done.
Sweet.
There are things that can go wrong during printing that if you do it that way, you don't see it until you come back in the morning.
Right.
A cool little feature of the Apex is they've got a little camera that comes with it that you can have inside, so you can sort of watch it as it's printing.
All right.
That's a cool feature. We've thought about setting up honestly like a CCTV setup in here so that we can watch it and see if anything goes wrong. But
there's not much you can do, right? Like if you cannot stop it remotely or something.
There are new printers that you can do that with.
Okay.
So you can actually control them from your phone. You can get like a little app that connects to it. Right. And you're able to stop it, or you can pause it, or you can tell it to lift up and you can check it, then restart it. And some of the newer ones also have auto fall tech in them. So if your print falls off the thing and there's too much pressure on the LCD screen, I think that's how it works, then it'll sort of pause the print. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's only very, very new. But if you don't have a printer like that, then yes, stuff can go wrong. Okay. Like what we've had with the 2 Mega 8Ks. So we've had prints fall off, and then the plate as it comes down has sort of pierced down into the FEP, and then resin has come through, and that has hardened onto the LCD screen. And so that just killed our LCD screen. We've had it happen before, and you're able to get it off. You just put IPA down on it, you let it sort of soak into it, then you can just very gently try and take it off. But I would always recommend having a protective film over the top of your screen.
But is that something that you get on the side, or it comes specifically for that?
Some of them come with it. So the Apex came with a single one, but then you have to buy more. And I'm not too sure, but I don't think they're printer specific. You can just buy other ones that are just on there, and they'll fit in. They're
right.
Fine.
Sorry, Sarah is asking, can you recommend a film to buy, or it depends on the?
I will find one. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
The brands of it, but yeah, I'll find that, and if I don't find it before, I'll give it as info that we can share.
Sweet.
But yeah, do we want to look at? So from the do we just want to go through in order? So let's start with how I process the 3D model, and then how I support it, and then the cleanup step.
Yeah. I think I'm up for anything really. Up to you, man.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. And then and then when I'm going through the cleanup process, I'll swap over to my phone, and we can just watch it all from close up.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, cool. All right. Let me. Swap myself around, and I will share screen. Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it. We can see it.
That's a flattering angle of me. So this is the one that Pablo sent through to me.
Beautiful.
All split up into the multiple different parts, and it was quite heavy as well, which is fine. It was 20 million.
Yeah, I didn't decimate it or anything. I just literally sent Ethan what I finished with after detailing it in ZBrush.
Yeah. So what I love to do is I'll just remove this one. I love to append a cube in there. And then with my cube, I just scale up so it covers everything, take it up, put my origin down to the bottom, and then I set it as, subtractive through live Boolean. And then what I can do with that is, just drop it down, and it's going to show you, I'll move it out of the way. It's going to show you if you have any pockets of air inside of it. So the way that this crab was designed, as you can see, the body is a piece, is a subtool, and then all of the legs are a separate one. And so just because of that, there are gaps between the legs where they join up and the body.
So those are the buckets.
Yeah.
And for anyone that's
And-
new, why is it bad to have pockets?
Because you can have resin get caught inside of it, especially if you're printing, if you're not hollowing out your model and you're just printing it as a solid, then it's not going to print those bits. It's gonna make a little hole in there, and then as it continues to go up, that bit will just stay full of resin, and then eventually stuff can happen. You can start leaking, or even worse. This is probably why I don't normally print solid unless it's quite small. Is that the resin inside will be curing at a different rate to the outside shell.
Right.
And so that just means, it's expanding a bit more on the inside, and then you'll start getting cracks on the outside.
All right.
So as I'll go through later, I love to hollow pretty much everything. So
and it saves
this
resin.
crab, yeah, that as well. So it's cheaper to hollow it out, and there's just a lot of positives to hollowing. There are, the slices they can hollow. So segueing here, sorry. I use Chi2 box at the moment, but I am transitioning over to Lychee. So I do know that Lychee has a lot of extra features, and I'm exploring them at the moment. And I know that their hollowing is a lot better, but I just know that in Chi2, the hollowing isn't great. But I know that doing it in ZBrush, it's fantastic. So I'm always going to hollow inside of ZBrush, and I'll take you through those steps as well. So I'll swap over to this version of the crab. This version is literally just Boolean everything together. So it's a single nice piece, and then it does have those pockets inside of it. So once you get to that point, you can just split out. If it's been able to find that you've got any little islands, you can just split it, and it will, thankfully that's not on this one, but it will just sort of separate out all your different sort of parts and your subtools basically. And then you're just left with the nice one that you want to work with, and you can get rid of all the others. So this is just a Boolean one, so it does look the same. So it does still have those little pockets and islands inside. So the way that I like to do that, and let me just preface, I'm not a ZBrush guru like Pablo is. So I'm sure there's probably some special way that this could be done better, but honestly, it works. So that's all that
that's all you need, right? If it works, it works.
Exactly. So I like to my inflate tool. Just grab that. I click on my crab, and I just go through, and I slowly start to inflate all of this stuff so that it all just layers over itself. So as long as you've got, your geo sort of interconnecting and there's no holes in between, when you do another Boolean after this step, it will just connect it all together. And then you'll be able to split it again, and then you'll lose all of the crunchy extra geo that you get here. And you can see it a bit here. But the reason it won't have separated many of the parts is because,
you're unifying everything.
Is because you'll have, let me take a step back, slow down. In the previous step where I just Booleaned everything together, and then I went to split apart the areas and it didn't take my little islands out, that's because there's probably a very, very small hole that separates out to the side. To the outside. So it doesn't see it as an island, like a little pocket on the inside.
It's not a full bubble.
So it sees it as, the outside of the mesh. So that's what doing this step is. It's just, you don't have to fully enclose like all of this. Honestly, you just need to find where that hole is and fill it.
And throughout this process, do you have to keep moving up and down the little box that is Boolean things out just to check that? Okay.
So you can either move that, or you can just keep moving the crab up and down. But it's perfectly gives you sort of layer by layer where your holes are. So like I'd always start at the bottom and I'd start making my way up. So the claws and the feet are all fine. They're perfect. Then we start getting to the connector parts. So here on the left, you'll see the first one.
Yeah.
So it's honestly just going in, inflating it a bit, making sure that it's covered as much as you can. And honestly, a lot of the time, I will do this step multiple times. So I'll do it once, and then I'll Boolean it together. I'll split it apart, and then I'll see if I've still got holes, and I'll just keep doing that. On a model like this, I wouldn't say it's going to take me any more than 10 minutes to get it done. The only thing is you just got to make sure that while you're inflating, you're only inflating
the inside.
Yeah. And you're not ruining the mesh on the outside.
Right.
Another way that you can do it is you can just append some basic shapes and sort of put them all the way through. So I could just append a cylinder, make it really, really small. Take it over here. A bit bigger than that.
Yeah, now I can see why you say when you were printing the extra mile character that it was a bit of a pain.
Yeah, there was some stuff with that one. Oh yeah. You had on one of the extra mile characters, which was the alien guy that had the tubes coming out, and he sort of had his hands like this. He's quite a chubby character. Yeah. So his tubes that came through actually didn't have anything between the end of the tube and what it was connecting into. It looked really cool, and for rendering, awesome. But it's like it's those kind of things you got to think about if you're wanting to make your asset 3D printable.
No open geometry.
That one, and on that one, I missed that until I printed it, and we actually had I ended up just super gluing it and connecting it like at the end, connecting it back up. It printed fine, it was great. But it was just one little thing I missed. So I drop this in, I take it up above my Boolean piece, and there you go. So that sort of covers most of it. And then you could go in, you can start inflating these shapes as opposed to your actual mesh, which is what I did for a number of the extra mile characters, because the geo was just a little bit too close to the outside shell, and I didn't want to ruin the model. So just dropped in a couple of spheres and subdivided them a whole lot, so I had lots of geo to play with, and just inflated and moved and just made these really weird shapes on the inside. But I mean, it doesn't matter what it looks like, because you're just trying to fill the pockets. Yeah, if it works. So I go through this whole process. I move the reason that you wouldn't put these extra shapes in is just so that you can move the crab up and down, because now I've got to click off every time and move my cube up and down. Since these are two separate tools. But I just go through going layer by layer by layer, going up and up and up until I've gotten everything filled, and then I would have I don't think I've saved that model,
and there's no, let's say, there's no need for decimating it, right? Because that's one of the things that you usually hear is for 3D printing, you need to decimate it. Or is that something that you do after?
I did decimate this one a little bit. Just at 20 mil, my computer was taking a slight tank. Just as you get closer in, and you're trying to go in on that geo and try and fill it in, it can tank a little bit.
But that is just within ZBrush. You don't have to do it for the other stuff.
Exactly. But for 3D printing, it doesn't really matter if your geo is really high. It still comes out. The only thing you're losing is detail if you're decimating all the way down.
Got it.
So I decimated this down to 5 or 6 mil or something. So still quite high, still retained all of the detail. I just took it down a little bit so I could work with it a bit easier.
Cool.
So unfortunately, I don't have this model done as a full piece. So I can show you how I process it on another one, how I hollow on another model.
Yep.
That's all right.
So that's the next
So
step.
this is one
After
of our,
you fix all the bubbles and pockets, then you go into, hollowing it.
So what? Yep. So you fill in everything, you Boolean it, you do that step a couple of times, you do the whole split to parts, which I've only learned of quite recently. I was exporting out to Blender and separating it in there, and that was a nightmare. So I'm very happy that I found the split to parts button. As I said, I'm not a ZBrush guru, so I'm learning as I go. But I mean, this just means it's one step easier, one less export that I have to do. But yeah, after that, once you're fully happy that you've got no extra pockets inside, that you've got no random geo just sitting around in there, you can go to the hollowing step. So my hollowing process includes the Ryan's Tools plugin for this easy shell option here. So with that, you're able to hollow out to a certain amount, and it will just give you this sort of fully hollowed mesh, which is great. So with that, you just need to find a point that you want your first hole to be. So I'm happy with mine being at the bottom. That's how I do most of my, actually got him printed out here as this extra large. I'm just sharing on my camera, if you can see. I've got him printed out as an extra large, super massive guy, but I hollow everything from the bottom there, since that's the least visible item, or sorry, least visible face. So I hollow everything from the bottom. So I will mask out a shape here. I'll decide how thick I want my walls to be. So I go 3 because that's pretty much 3 mil. That's based on my scale here. So I can then hit hollow, and it's going to create this lovely subtraction in the middle, and it just auto sets it as a subtraction Boolean. So from there, I can append another cube and do the same process as before, just to see layer by layer how my item has been hollowed. So this is a pretty nice hollowing. So you can see, these arms connect. So there's enough of a connection between there that it puts a hole all the way through. And it's giving you pretty nice geo on the inside as well for a hollowing Boolean. So yeah, you just go up and down, check it out. So I used to do this through G2 when I very first started, just because it was nice and simple. But quite often it would give me really terrible results. So I know Lychee does a lot better with that. So that's why I'm experimenting there. But if you had extra random little bits of geo there, it would sort of create these small islands inside of extra geo, which you don't need. And it just, it's more things that you're printing for no reason. So I love to hollow inside of ZBrush. Stop. Cool. So from here, I'll then decide, all right, I want a couple of extra holes in it. Normally I'll do my main hole inside of here, and then inside of my slicing program, that's where I'll add extra holes. Just because when you're inside of your slicing program, you can then see what orientation you want to put your model in for printing. And that matters a fair bit, just because of where your supports are going to be and how you want to support it. So I've got that nice hole there. I'll just divide it up a bit so it looks nice and smooth. And yeah, there's a lovely hole there. So if I'm working on a piece that I need to split into multiple parts, then I will put additional holes in. So this item is a single piece, and it gets printed out not at the massive scale. It gets printed out at like 120 mil. So that's on the printer at the moment. I'll show you that. That'll be the one that we'll clean up. So with that, I'll just do, this single hole. But if I'm doing a multi-part like this guy, which is the same piece, but the extra large one. So this one's scaled up quite a bit. As you can see, we have these multiple parts and we've got these keys to sort of place it in together. So with this, I will put extra holes in. For something this large, like the torso, you have this massive hole at the bottom. So when you're flushing it out and cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol or metho, which you can use as well, methylated spirits, it's cheaper, still works. You can flush it in and it'll flush out quite easily because it's got a nice big hole at the bottom. But let's just talk about like one of these shoulder bits. It's got, this is the hole that I used to start it, but I'm going to put a second hole in it just to alleviate any pressure that comes up and also to be an extra flush hole. So I like to use just like a medical syringe to, get some isopropyl alcohol and just flush it straight into one of these holes. It'll sort of circulate around and sort of get all the extra resin that it can. And then you have this extra flush hole for jettisoning all of that liquid that you shot into it. And I do that with, things that are this large. I did it with the crab, but then I forgot to put a second hole in the crab. And that's the main reason that you do. Without it, with things that are quite small, if you only got one hole in them, then the pressure of the liquid inside just means it's not going to drop back out. Like it's just going to stay inside of it. And so adding a second hole means you have more, like you've got extra airflow into it and it will just drain out for you. So, it's one of the mistakes that I forget about all the time. But adding a second hole to stuff is important. But you just want to hide them as much as you can as well, so that, you're not going to have a big hole on the front here because that's your main visual point. And it would look really ugly. So I've already glued this guy together, so I can't really show you the holes that I've printed on him. But as you can see on the digital file, that's what I've got inside of this guy. So with the crab, back to the crab, as you can see, I only put one hole inside, and that was a mistake. So it's not a massive mistake. It's not a huge deal. It just meant that when I was trying to clean it out, it caused issues. So what I should have done is I should have put in another hole just here. So that's just, append a cylinder. It's just Boolean work. Get down, make it small, turn it. And there we go. Another hole, a bit smaller than the other. That's what I should have done. But I just missed it, which my mistake, not the end of the world. You can add in holes, or, it just takes extra time sort of shaking it to get the liquid out. But yeah, this was the crab. So as you can see, I do this step again. Nice and hollowed out. As we go down, we see, even like you can see that the legs on the side, they've got, they're hollowed out here. And the reason that these ones are hollow and these back ones aren't is that there was enough space down here where it connects into the main body that you could have a wall of 3 mil thickness. So as you go thinner on your hollowing, you'll probably get more cavity inside, but then your walls are just going to be thinner, which means it might be more brittle. I've often made the mistake of putting a extra large print that I've hollowed out as 3 mil, shrinking it down and printing it small, and then looking at it, it looks fine, but as soon as you touch it, there's no structure to it at all, and it just falls apart. because the printers can print something that thin, but it just has no structural integrity and breaks immediately and just fully collapses. Thankfully, it's like 3 cents worth of resin when you print like that. But it's still 8-9 hours worth of your time. So, there's always little mistakes that are going to be made, but you learn from them, you remember them for next time, and you just hope you don't make that mistake again. So that is pretty much my hollowing process and my digital processing for each model that I get. Yeah. So from here, I would then be exporting out my hollowed crab. I just like to export out as an OBJ. You can export as an STL. Either way, your slicer program will accept either format. So I'm now over. Sorry, I might pause for a moment and see if there's any major questions. There's quite a few questions. Yes, I would swap to Lychee as well. I'm in the process at the moment. So the reason that I've used G2 over Lychee is just because it comes with it. And for the majority of my stuff, I'm doing volume over singular. I'm not spending a lot of time or like manually supporting all of my assets just because I'm printing high volumes. So I honestly like to use the auto supports. And even though it does put quite a few on there, it's just clean up afterwards to remove print pimples and things like that. And I'll go over what they look like and how you can clean them easily. So yes, so with keys and stuff, I have this.
Hey, Ethan. Sorry.
Hello.
I just came.
Welcome back. Oh, hello. All right, he's gone. So this is my.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, can hear you now. How you doing? And I can no longer hear you. So this is my print anchor. So this is the piece.
Yeah,
that
sorry, I don't know what happened. My Windows update.
Oh, good. Yeah, so this is my print anchor. So I love to use this because it's not just a straight shape going in. So I wouldn't just use like a rectangle. I'd always have, it sort of comes in and it allows you to slide things in a lot easier, because with 3D printing, while it's pretty accurate, you never know if something's going to go wrong. If there's going to be a slight movement, yeah. Sorry, Pablo, you do keep cutting off. But yeah, you never know if there's going to be slight movement during the printing step. If something's just going to go slightly wrong. There's so many different variants that just affect 3D printing. One of the main ones is temperature. If where you've got your printer, if it gets bumped in the night, I found that where we are, hoons love to just take their cars up and down the road, and they're extremely loud. And I found that, it can make the bench vibrate a little bit. And that just means on that layer, there might be a slight layer line because of that. So, there's so many little things that can happen. But, you still get your printout in the end and you just go in and it's touching up afterwards. But yeah, so this is my print anchor so that it slides in nicely. I think I've got one here. No, that's a square. Here. Oh, so this print is actually a 3D scan of a cosplayer, a local cosplayer. This is a failed print, unfortunately, because of the way that I orientated it. As you can, not sure if you can see, but the wings at the bottom here, they didn't quite print right. And this one has exceptional layer lines in it. That's because I orientated my print. So my piece was like this, and I actually printed her like this. Now, even though it's at an angle, it was a very silly way to print it because these wing bits had to start printing from a vast amount of support. And if those supports aren't perfect, it's not going to start printing, or it's going to miss some of them like it's done here. So the way I actually printed this in the end was like this when I reprinted. This just meant that these pieces are almost like pre-supported by the rest of the model as it comes out. So, even though there were exceptionally long supports going up to the feet, it was already pre-supported by printing the legs. So as it goes up, it's like auto-supporting itself as it continues up. But the problem was when I printed it this way, there was no auto-supporting to these little islands with the print down here. Sorry, I segued. What I was talking about is my chamfered little anchors. So I've got them on the feet here. I've got matching ones on the center in here. Scale-wise, I drop it down just by a little bit. Like it's not much, just so that, it slides in nicely and fits in as this one does. Just slot straight in and she's held like that. I think I made these ones a little bit too big. But, it's just trial and error until you find your exact size for each different model, how many different anchors you need, where you sort of put them to hide them, that kind of stuff. Thankfully, with this one, the only anchors I needed were in the feet, so they're easy to hide. Same with this guy, really easy to hide just inside of the model. It's all hidden. So a lot of people like to split up models. I don't. I think one of the main reasons to split up models is if you can't fit it onto your print bed, if you've got a smaller printer. I'm lucky enough that I've got some larger printers, so I don't split things quite often. Pretty much the majority of Pablo's pieces that we printed for the ZBrush Summit last year, I didn't split them up. We split up the ancient robot, just because that one was a lot easier to split, symmetrical legs and arms, and then just a big body. And you were able to hide the supports inside of those arm joints. Really nice and easy, nice and simple. But, the way I do it is if you don't have to split it, don't split it. That's just how I operate, just because, I have some larger printers, so I don't need to that often.
Hey, Ethan, can you hear me all right?
Hello, welcome back.
Hey, I think there's a lot of delay. Don't know what's going on with my internet.
Okay.
But it's better now.
Yes.
Yeah,
welcome
cool.
Back.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the questions. There was one about the support that you just mentioned, that when you print it as a single piece and you need to add a lot of support, is there a trick to make the support marks less visible?
Cleanup.
Cleanup is the trick.
Yeah. So like I was saying, so I know that Chi2 has a lot better control over being able to put supports down and being able to, auto support or manually put your supports down. But because I mostly print in volume, I just let Anycubic auto support my stuff, and then I do cleanup post. One of the ways that I ensure that I have less print pimples is how I take my supports off, and also the thickness of your supports. So the thicker your supports and the thicker the connector, the more likely is that when you take your support off, it might take a little chunk out of your model. So right. I like to make my supports as thin as possible, or as thin as I can. Sometimes, you have to go thicker. So like for this guy, like I had to go quite, like I couldn't just do small supports on this because the item is too heavy. It would have sheared off and pulled itself off of the supports. So for this one, I had to go a bit thicker, but then it was just a lot of sanding afterwards. And I'll also walk you through how I take my supports off. I like to use hot water. Sort of hot water or a heat gun are the best ways to do it. The thing with hot water is, look, I prefer it, but you just need to be able to dry your model off before you cure it afterwards. Otherwise, you're going to be left with, these resin water sort of really shiny curing parts on your model afterwards that are like running in like the rivulets and stuff, and it doesn't really look nice. So I also walk you through how I dry it off. I have a very large air compressor here, and with that, I'm able to just dry my pieces off completely. Small air canisters is what I initially used before I started using the compressor. It's just, trying to dry off your piece as much as you can if you're using water. And I had a couple of people ask about the 3D scan. So it's a local cosplayer. Her name is Twerkin Gherkin. Funny name, but she's cosplayed as Hawks from My Hero Academia. So with the whole 3D face scanning, we've also, branched out into doing full body cosplays. So this is just one of the pieces that we've done. So with that, you go in and you decide on how to split the model to scan it, and then scan all the separate pieces, then inside of ZBrush, place all the pieces together, and then just Boolean it all together, doing the same process as hollowing. So I've got my hollowing sort of jettison areas down the bottom here. It's very hard to see, but I have one inside of the legs, and I do have one in the back here between the arm and the wing. Just so that, when it's going up and up and up, there's also these air pressure releases. So you're not going to get layer. So layer lines can also be caused by too much pressure building up inside of your model. That's why putting some more holes in it as it goes up, depending on the size of your piece, will help. Because otherwise, you get resin caught inside of it if it's got nowhere to go at the end. Yes. Yeah. So hot water can deform certain parts. If it depends how thin it is. So I keep thick enough walls, and I don't leave it in the hot water very long, so that we don't have any deformation. Also, I use a couple of different tools because you can get to a point where your supports have more structural integrity than your print, and that just means your print is going to break off as opposed to the support. So I'll quickly grab it. I have a lovely little pair of pliers that I use to just snip off any of those little bits that come up. I've got a stack of these, I ordered these off Amazon, 5 of them for $25 or something. So, the water can get into these and rust them out if you don't take care of them. So take care of your tools. How do you dispose of it later? Now it has uncured resin. Yeah. I'm probably a bit naughty in that sense. So you can sort of leave it out. You could leave it out in the sun, and your bits might cure up a bit. You might get some more globules that you can take out. Otherwise I do just pour it down the sink, which is probably naughty of me, and I shouldn't do that. But I attempt to clean inside of the isopropyl alcohol as much as I can, so that I don't have much resin left on my prints when it gets to that point. Yes. Pouring resin down the sink isn't good. So yeah, I clean my prints as much as I possibly can before they get to the water stage. So I will walk you through the tools that we've got here to do all of that. It's just very a lot of isopropyl alcohol that we go through. We go through quite a lot. because every time that you clean with it, it gets dirtier and dirtier. So you have to swap it out for new stuff. So isopropyl alcohol in Australia is certainly it's more expensive than other areas of the world. So methylated spirits works just as well. That's what we used to use before we started, doing quite large quantities and having to have just isopropyl alcohol instead. Cool. Okay. I can jump on to supporting and how I decided to print this piece. So because I like to use the auto supports, let's just scale this up a bit so we can see it. I don't want my supports to be visible. So that means the majority of my supports, I want them to be on the bottom. But then we also run into the problem of having these little claw feet be their own separate islands, basically. That just means, the supports have to go up a fair bit before they reach them. So you can print it. You could print it like this, where all the supports are pretty close. Like it doesn't have to go up very far, as opposed to, having it like this, where you'd have extreme supports running all the way up. I'll just quickly show you what I mean by that. Where you'd have, these really high supports running all the way up. So you do a couple and it does give it this lattice work so that, it supports itself as it's going up. But, you never know if something's going to go wrong with that. And you might get a slight tremble in your printer, and this piece goes slightly off kilter, and therefore when it comes up to reach the foot, something might go wrong. And it's not going to connect up, and you're going to lose some printing area there. So I'll remove all these. So the way I actually printed this piece was I went very forward on it, almost all the way over, so that these pieces were able to pre-support themselves as they went up. And yes, that meant that I did have more supports on the claws here, but that just meant, a fair bit of cleanup afterwards. So you can print your item like this, where you've got all your supports down the bottom. They're going to be invisible, but you can run the risk of these little bits down here not printing correctly, as you could see with the wingtips on my piece here. So yeah, as I said, I am slowly moving over to lychee at the moment. But as of now, for all of the stuff that I do, the auto supporting is perfect. It gets the job done. I love to use it. It's nice and simple. If you've got the time to, if you guys are printing your own personal piece, and you're trying to make it as highly detailed as you possibly can, and you have the time to spend on it, definitely take the time to support it manually. Go in, choose how you want to support everything. You want your thicker supports on the bottom. So, I'd probably up this to medium, and I'd put a couple along the bottom here, so that, you've definitely got the strength to continue, so it doesn't fall off. But then as you continue to go up, you'd probably start going for lighter supports, so that, between here, up in this area, you wouldn't need very hard connections between your model and your supports. So yeah, and then if you're doing it manually, you're just continuing to go up, you're supporting it as best you can, and it gives you this nice support lattice work between. You can, add in extra supports if you think that, it needs additional structural support. But yeah, as I said, I love to just use the auto supporting because it's easy, and it gets the job done, and it just means that there is more cleanup time at the end, but it's still pretty good. So from there, you've got all your settings. there's a lot of trial and error in this. There's a lot of tests that are out there that you can run for dialing in all the settings for your printer, making sure that, detail comes out on those tinier test prints. And then you just go in and you're playing around with all your settings, ensuring that the curing time is better. Most of the settings come in with your exposure time, which is how long the screen stays on per level. Your layer height, which is your micron level. So for the M3 Max, you can get it down to 30 microns. So for longer prints or more detailed things, I'll run it at that. Otherwise, I'll just run it at 50. And then your lift distances and lift speeds. So these are where, you can really dial it in. If it's running too fast, you might get ripping on your model. You might get, extreme layer lines or things that actually split apart. Or if it's going too fast, you might even get the model falls off from the supports, just because the suction is too much. And if it goes up too fast, it just keeps the model there and pops it off from the supports. So we have had that before, and that's usually what causes additional problems, like with the FET being pierced, because when it comes back down, it ends up pressurizing and breaking. Things like that can happen. So yeah, dialing in your settings before you get into like exceptionally detailed prints is always recommended. Plant-based resin. Yes, we have tried it. We didn't get great results. So we, let me grab my resin. So this is the one that I use every day, pretty much. The Aqua Ivory, frozen 4K. It's just lovely. Gives us really good results every time. We went up to the 8K version and we were just having problems with it. So drop back down to the 4K. It's really nice. And also in Australia, Amazon have them for quite a reasonable price. And that's easy next day delivery. So when we get big orders that come in overnight, we can easily just order a whole bunch of these. We know that they're going to work every time, and the cleanup on them, like we've nailed that down so that we remove all of this from our supports before we get into the water cleaning stage. Pablo? What's that?
I'm still here. I can still hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, all good.
Cool. All right. Groovy. Yeah, so that's the resin. I think we've gone through the majority of the digital side now. Is there anything else you'd want us to look at, Pablo, or cover here?
To me, like this is pretty exciting because it's pretty simple. I like anything that is automated, like the sports. But yeah, I think for me it would be more about trying to learn a little bit more about what are the best resins or try different resins. Play around with where to place the holes, and I think those are things that even though you've been showing them, it would come with practice. So. Yeah,
yes, it definitely does. And I always I still make mistakes. So like with the crab, as I'll just get my phone running. Sorry, is that running?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So as you can see, there's a single hole in the middle here. But then I forgot to put another hole in, so I had to break in a little bit just because all of my resin was all of my isopropyl alcohol was staying inside of the item. So yeah, holes where you can put them, you try and hide them as best you can. So I didn't put any on the face or on the top here because, they're on display at all times, but you can chuck them on the bottom easily because, when he's sitting on the table, you're never going to see it. So. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, it just comes with practice.
Yeah.
The more you do, the more you learn, the more mistakes you make, and the better you can be. Yes.
Cool. Guys, is there any other questions? Just put it in the chat. I'm also going to check the Discord. I think most of the questions have been answered anyway.
Cool. I might flip us around then. Right. Flip us around and look at the setup over here for a bit.
Yeah, sweet. I just have one more question from Cord, and he's asking, with your keys, do you use a single key or double key with a duplicate, just a bit smaller inside the bigger one for cutting in your keys on the models?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So the single one, it's the same as, it's a bit nicer than just using like a single full rectangle, because sharp lines like that and like a shape that it has to match to, you might get problems. It might not print perfectly. With a chamfered off one, it's going to slide in a bit better. But even doing the exact same item, so like Booleaning out like the one that you've attached to your model, isn't always going to print perfectly. So yes, I love to duplicate a second one, scale it up slightly, and that way it will fit in and will slide in perfectly. And then, if it doesn't, there's still a bit of wiggle room, just, drop in some super glue. The one that I love to use at the moment is the Gorilla Super Glue Gel.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's amazing. It's perfect. And it's not super runny like other super glues are.
I used I can't remember which one in the past, but I tried to glue something that was broken in the transport of the 3D prints from the summit last year back to Australia. But it was just kind of like melting the resin. So it wasn't like gluing anything. I just didn't know about it.
Yes. So yeah, you got to be careful as well, because chemical reactions happen between resin and some glues. So I found this one is nice, is great. I don't really have any issues with it. It's more like the glue is gluing to the glue. But yes, some people use resin as glue. Absolutely. I've done that a few times. If I'm at an earlier stage and I've still got some extra resin, I'll turn this back around. So I've got an extra little black light. So with this, I just used a, sorry, place is a mess. I just use a cotton tip. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so just use a little cotton tip, get a bit of resin, put it around between the split, put it all together, have it, hold them as close as you can. Yeah, little UV torch, or I've just got this UV light. And then, off of that, it just cures that resin back up. You just got to be careful when you're doing that, not to get resin on your fingers when you're curing it. I've done that before and it burns like crazy. It was nasty. So yeah, you always use protective gloves, as I've got on at the moment. Just protect yourself as much as you can. In this sense, it's do as I say, not as I do, because there's quite a few times that I don't wear my protective gloves, but I should. Also, it's quite good to wear a little ventilator mask, especially if the resin that you're using is very potent, strong. There are some out there that are like really, really stinky. So I know some of the Anycubic ones, they're pretty smelly. And some of the Sorayatec I found has a very strong smell. Either the Aqua Ivory doesn't smell that bad, or I've just become accustomed to it. I don't think it really smells that bad.
There's questions here. Do you ventilate the room or filter it at all?
We have a very large space, but yes, sometimes. Especially when I'm doing like larger cleanups. So because we have such big printers, we do very large prints. And to do very large prints, you need a lot of isopropyl alcohol and you need a lot of cleaning material. So because of that, thankfully, we have 2 big doors on either side of the workshop, and then also a fan close by. So I can open those doors up, crank the fan up, and just air the place out. Because otherwise it's going to be really stinky for quite a few hours. So yes, ventilating is definitely important, and just taking the time to set up your workspace so that it has some ventilation. You've got cleaning materials nearby. So if a spill happens, we've got just rolls and rolls and rolls of wipes just to get stuff if it flops over or if anything spills, which happens a bit. I'll be working here. I forgot to put the lid back on one of the resin bottles. I bump it, it falls over a little bit, comes out. Like that's just a natural thing, especially with the vast, like the amount of resin bottles that we have here. Yes, so ventilation is important. Safety is important. Definitely gloves at the bare minimum. Have gloves on, especially when you're working with resin. And like I said, sometimes use a mask if it's exceptionally strong smelling, because that just means there's chemical fumes going into your system.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we want to look at doing a cleanup?
Yeah. Let's do the finish of the process thingy.
All right. So I'm going to
I really feel like if you have
take off my piece. So here's all my bits and pieces that I printed from last night. This one is actually
definitely
Patrick, the food guy. Yeah, sorry, someone's.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was someone here. I was just gonna mute them. All good.
Yeah, so that's the food guy that we spent time with at ZBrush Summit. So we scanned him over the ZBrush Summit. He designed up his barbarian, and we've printed them out. So I'm shipping that off. We've then got the smaller version of our Warhammer design, and then also the head to go on the big one, which needs reprinting. So from here, I just got a nice scraper that's got a nice chamfered edge so that it can just go in there and slide it all off.
And those prints, how long ago have they finished? Like you can just do that freshly?
Yeah, so this was a 15-hour print, and it actually, I think it finished late last night.
Oh, okay.
So it's been sitting there for a little while. So it's been dripping, which just means additional resin has been able to get itself off. But with this piece, because I orientated it like this, as it printed, I don't actually have an additional hole up here because everything would be on display. I wasn't able to put an extra hole in here. So there's probably going to be a bit of resin inside of here. Sorry, is that too high? Yeah, so there's probably going to be a bit of resin inside of here. So that just means when I get to my cleaning stage, I'm just going to make sure that I flush it out as much as I possibly can.
With the air thingy?
No. So I'll use just one of these.
Oh, okay.
Just fill it up with isopropyl alcohol and just flush it out as many times as it takes, just continuing until I'm happy that everything's off.
Okay. Yep. As you continue on that, probably maybe you can answer this. So Rhiannon is asking, so I think the question is more about that the printers that you have, they print upside down, but she's seen some of them that are the opposite. I think it has to do with the filament versus resin, most of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So resin prints, the way that they work, let me move my camera and I'll show you. So yeah, filament printing, you've got a base and a nozzle comes down and it prints like that and it builds upwards. With ours, or like all resin printers, or at least the majority of them, what's the best way to do that? I think I'll grab my phone for it. So the way that this printer works is this is the print bed here. Oh, sorry, this is the print plate. And then you've got your vat of resin here. So basically you get your resin, take it up, you pour it in, and this fills up, and you've got like this just reservoir of resin here to use. This one has an auto feeder, over the side. So when it detects that there isn't enough resin in it, it will actually auto feed in more resin. So you don't have to worry about running back in and sort of refilling it. It's also got a max level here. So that's where you want to fill it up to. You don't want to go above that when you start printing.
Right.
Once your print plate has come up above here, you can fill up as much resin as you want. It's not going to spill out unless you manually make it spill out. The reason it says only goes there for filling it up is when this comes down, it spreads all of your resin to the side, and it rises. So what happens is under here is a UV LED screen, and when you slice up your file, it tells this screen to flash on a shape for 2 seconds or however long you've set it for. Then that shape, there's enough of a space when this goes down between the very bottom of the vat and the plate that when that light goes on, it hardens the resin in that shape. It sticks to the plate, and then you just keep doing that repeatedly until your piece prints.
Yep, that's probably a very good explanation to understand how this thing works.
So that print, sorry, I'll turn this back on. That print took 15 hours, and it was 4,185 layers that it printed.
So you had to do that 14,000 times, or 4,000.
Yeah, it went up and down. Yeah, it went up and down 4,100 times. And each time it's just building one extra layer on top of another.
No wonder why it takes so long.
Yeah, it takes a long time. And the lower the micron level that you've got, the lower that your detail that your printer can go, that just means the more layers that it's going to print. So
with that micron, the higher the number means the higher the resolution, like the smaller the layer or the thinner.
No. So the lower the number means the more detail you're going to get, because there's additional layers that it's printing.
Got it.
So our big one here, we normally run it at 50 micron, where our smaller one we run it at 22.
Right.
So a print over here, is going to take half the amount of time that this smaller one's going to take, just because there's half the amount of layers that it needs to print.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's clean up this head. So from here, also the supports are a little bit harder than normal just because it's been left a while. So I like to get to these as quickly as I can, especially if you leave them, like a day or two, your supports are going to get harder, because even though, you've got this case to go on the printer that's, meant to be fully UV resistant and all that, there's still going to be a little bit of light that leaks through at different times, especially if you leave it for a day or two. That just means this is going to cure a little bit.
Right.
And curing a little bit is enough that it makes a bit of a difference when you're cleaning up, which just means when you're taking your supports off, you're going to get more print pimples. Cool. Okay. So my hands are super dirty. So from here, we spin this way and we look over at our cleanup area. Sorry, it's probably...
Are we looking at the sink at the end next to the water cooler?
We've got the sink over here, but also here.
All right.
This is our wash station. So it is a wash and cure. I believe it's an Anycubic wash and cure. We don't use it for curing, but we do use it for washing. So we've got these tubs here, which are full of isopropyl alcohol. This one's good. So you've got your little bucket.
Yep, French fries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with that, you put your item in there. You then drop it down into the bucket. So I've got some holes in the bottom of this. So I like to just sort of make sure that there's enough isopropyl going
Inside.
into those holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't, just make sure that it sort of fills up.
Mhm.
So that's pretty good.
So this
Then
is
put
the
the lid
like
on.
after you take it from the platform, this is the next thing you do. Just put it into alcohol and wait.
Yes. So it depends how much, depends how many supports you've got and how big your item is. So for a small item like that, even though it looks like there's quite a few supports, there's not that many supports.
Right.
So for that, I'd put it straight into here. For a bigger piece, because we print very large. Like we print, let me dry my hand and get something. We print full scale head, like
Okay.
1-to-1 actual face scans for actors. We print those. So what have I got?
And that that platform that you just put the bucket on, is it for something special?
Yes. So that is the curing. Sorry, I'll let that go because that's got to run for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll grab my phone again. Cool. Okay. So here is the wash station. So I set it for 4 minutes, and that means for 2 minutes it's going to spin everything one way, then it will slow down and it will spin everything the other way.
Cool.
So I'm looking at this now, and this is actually a really dirty vat of isopropyl. So I definitely need to change this after this print.
Okay.
After this clean. But if I show you inside,
cool.
So it's got a little sort of motor,
Right.
little whirlpool that it makes. So I mean, it's cleaning as much as it can. I'd probably put him down on his side just so he's fully covered. And yes, he's going to spin around a lot, but that just means, he's getting washed.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So what happened if, I mean, I'm looking at all these things, and obviously this is like super pro, and it makes it probably easier. But let's say if I'm doing this at my place, at my home, and I have just a spare room, or not a spare room, just a corner in my garage. What can I do? Just toothbrush?
Toothbrush is a really, really good starting point. So as long as you get a soft bristled one, because if you get a hard bristled one, you might put sort of lines into your print if it's still, if it's still not fully hardened.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, you can just get a bucket, and you can just sort of zhuzh it around inside and just get off what you can. Then you can just brush it off.
Okay.
I still use this all the time if I feel like there's bits that haven't been done or that haven't been reached.
Right.
And then also wherever it went, the syringe, to just sort of flush it out as much as you can, especially on inside prints.
Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely ways that you can do it easily from home.
As a starting point.
Yeah, as I said, isopropyl alcohol, we have a lot of it because we use a lot. But in Australia, it's fairly expensive.
Right.
So methylated spirits is a lot cheaper, and it does the job as well.
Okay. And do you? There's a question here. Sorry about that. Do you reuse the isopropyl alcohol?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a little. Sorry, get this video back on. We have a little tracker here. So we track how many prints we've cleaned with it. And once it reaches 5, we take it out, we put it into a larger bucket.
Yep.
So we end up putting it in this big container here. And
so that's all full of dirty.
Yes, full
alcohol.
of dirty stuff. Unfortunately, I'm looking at this one and I can't save this one. So that just means that it's super, so I'll bring it out. It's super duper cloudy.
Yeah.
And it's really gross. So that means this stuff is pretty dead. So sometimes we'll take this we'll put it into some jars like this, and we'll leave it out in the sun. And that way it will sort of separate a little bit.
Right.
But normally once it reaches this stage, that's pretty dead.
Okay.
So when we clean with this, we'll do about 5 cleans, and then I'll transfer it into that. I'll leave it for a while, and normally it will separate. So you'll get some isopropyl alcohol that is, it's still a little bit dirty, but it's not super dirty.
So useful for cleaning?
Still useful for cleaning. So that's just it's finished. So that's good. So you leave it for a few days, and then the sediment will drop to the bottom, and what you've got left on top, you can reuse that. But as you see with this one, you can't really see it in the video. There's a very thin layer that looks okay, but the rest of it is super cloudy. So this is dead stuff. I wouldn't reuse this. From here, this is when we put it into these containers, and we leave it out in the sun, and it will sort of harden itself. And then the sort of really not just these, we put it in buckets as well. Leave it out in the sun, it will harden itself up, and then that slop can then be, gotten rid of in a proper way. Like you wrap it up, put it in the bin, that kind of stuff. You don't want to, put it straight down the sink, because that's very unenvironmentally friendly.
Right.
So I've that's finished now. But to segue back into what I was talking about before, we do really, really big prints. So like we've got this nice big mask.
Very cool.
So Black Panther mask. We did a golem head.
Nice.
So, these are really big prints. So when I do a big print, they don't fit in that thing.
Right.
So for something like that, I prefer to go over to the sink, have a big bucket of isopropyl alcohol, and you're just going over, like you're tipping it over, and it washes over at once. And you tip it back, and you tip it back, and you just, you go through as many washes as it takes to get a lot of the resin off of the supports, because the supports still contain a lot of resin. So for something small like this, I'm happy to put it in here, let it wash itself. But for something bigger that has, hundreds of supports, that retains a lot of resin on those support beams. So I drop it through that first to be able to get the majority of the resin off the big supports. Then I'll usually wash it with just a bit of a larger brush. So it's a bit larger than a toothbrush. So with that, I'll have it in there, and I'll just be cleaning it as much as I can. If it's then of the size that I can drop into this, now that I've taken the supports off, I'll drop it in there. Otherwise, I'll just clean it as much as I can with a toothbrush, by just swashing as much stuff over it and just spending, that time to make sure it's as clean as possible before I, clean it off with water or take it on to the next step.
I got a couple of questions about what you just talking about. Quick and easy one. Did you manage to fit those heads on the 8K or in the Apex, or is the Apex bigger?
Apex is bigger, but we printed these on the 8Ks, on the Mega 8Ks.
Okay.
So these were actually some of the first prints that we did.
Okay. Cool. And the other one is, are curing stations better than more budget-friendly options? I'm not sure what that means, but
so I guess more budget friendly is, just having a bucket and doing it by hand. I mean, it depends. I know I think it was Anycubic released a wash and cure station last year. They had it at the ZBrush Summit.
I know what. Okay.
Yeah, what a terrible design that was.
Yeah,
like whoever made that didn't actually clean up prints, because it wasn't made for hollow models at all. It wasn't made for anyone that wanted to dry their model after the clean before it got recured.
And it was filling it with water as well as.
Yeah. And so it wasn't great. So
Right.
this one is pretty simple. We used to have an ultrasonic bath. So that was just a really small one. It was only, it was only this big, so we could only do small prints with it.
Okay.
But what that did was that just was ultrasonic, so it just vibrated the isopropyl alcohol that was in it at like an exceptionally fast rate, and that was meant to sort of get all the resin sort of to separate off from it. For quite a while, it was good. It worked fine. But we just got bigger and bigger and bigger. We had bigger prints, so we had to upscale. But like I said, even this one isn't big enough for our bigger prints. So normally I've got that huge bucket of all the dirty stuff. I empty the dirty stuff, and then I just fill up this bucket with isopropyl alcohol, drop it in there, drop it back, just make sure it's running off it as much as as it possibly can to clean it. And then it's just going in manually with a brush or with the squidgy bit.
The syringe or something. Yeah,
and just getting out as much resin as you possibly can.
Cool.
So that is now cleaned. So there it is. So I'll pull it out. I'll have a look at it. At the moment, I can't actually get to the holes on the bottom because of all the supports. So that means there's probably still a little bit of resin or isopropyl and resin that's sort of stuck inside. So for this one, I am going to have to hit it with hot water first and get off my supports, and then I'll come back and I'll give it another flush out after that. So take it over to the sink. Am I too far away now? Do you want me to?
It's all right. I think we can see it. Is it just to drop the hot water in there?
Yeah. So I clean it off with regular water first, just so that it's not all cloudy and milky. Goes in the bucket. I drop in my hot water. Just going to do a little bit. Oh, it's not very hot. So I pulled this kettle before we started. Yeah, I'm just going to hit that again. So in the meantime, I will just grab my phone.
And what you said about having to do another wash or like dipping into alcohol again, that's not. I mean, is it like a common thing, or is another thing based on experience that you look at it and just like I need an extra one, or what are the things that you look for when you decide to do another extra dip into alcohol?
So the things I look for is if it's still tacky afterwards, if it feels like there still could be some resin on it. Also, what I just washed it in is pretty dirty. Right. So I definitely need to do it in a cleaner one again. That's very dirty. So feel if it's still a bit tacky. For this one, I do know that my supports are hiding the hollowing hole. So I can't actually, from where I am right now, I can't get into the insides of the model. So that means I'm definitely going to have to redo it. I'm going to have to get the supports off so I can get into it and then flush it out. Look, there are a lot of eco-friendly options that are out there. I will just preface that we try and be as eco-friendly as we can, but it is a bit of a chemical process, and it's not super eco-friendly what I do. I do have some off spills that do go down the sink. So please don't judge me too harshly.
All good.
So just I saw some comments in there about that being eco-friendly, and look, we try, but I mean the whole thing in and of itself is a very chemical heavy. It's resin. It isn't a super eco-friendly thing in the first place. There are options out there. We have tried the water washable stuff. We have tried the plant-based resins. We just get exceptionally good results with this other stuff. And just we print in high volume, so we have to be consistently good for the amount of volume that we're putting out. So that's that's why we've had to steer away from that.
Yeah, okay.
The more eco-friendly stuff, just it doesn't give us the perfect results that we're after. So water's boiled. It's nice and hot. I burn my fingers all the time when I'm doing this. So one of the ways that I like to avoid that is just with heaps of different tools. I'll try and put my camera on so we can get a bit of a close-up.
All right.
I hope it works.
Yeah, that works.
That works. I'll just work
perfect.
here. You can do that. Okay.
Sweet.
So I love this tool. This is like a nice right angle scraper. So with that, you can easily get inside of like the bigger prints to pull out all the support. I got a nice set of jewelry tweezers off of Amazon, super cheap, just a whole bunch of, I think it's like 5 or 6 different size ones. And with these, you can just grab your supports and pull them off really easily. A couple of different brushes. We got that one. We got a much thicker one for our larger stuff, so we can get all the resin off from inside, like our big head prints. And then I got some very nice, just automotive wet and dry sandpaper. This is 240 grit, so it's nice and smooth finish that it gives you. And I've just got sheets and sheets and sheets of this that I just cut off little bits so that I can easily stand down when I'm in this process.
Okay.
And then I've got the lovely little syringe as well. So my hands are burning now, but now that I put it in hot water, it is literally just
that's pretty easy.
going to come off like butter. So that's why I put it in water. I didn't used to. I used to just.
I didn't know that trick either. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Hot water is perfect. So if you don't do anything like that, you're going to have a lot more pockets, and I'd much prefer to have print pimples like I've got here than print pockets. So pockets is when a bit of your model comes off, whereas pimples is just when a little bit of the support is left on.
Right.
So with this now, I just take my tweezers, I pull off little bits that are left there.
What if your 3D print has I don't know, lots of thin areas? Let's say like those tubes that this guy has, or these connections are like really thin. Would they come out when you do this process?
Yeah. So you sometimes will reach a point where your supports have a lot more structure than your print. So you've got to find, that comes down to when you're supporting. If you've got stuff that's really delicate, you don't want to have as many supports on them. Like we had the Rogue design for our Become a Miniature. It has these like 4 daggers that are on the side of it. Wow. What a nightmare those was. Like they were the worst thing in the world to print just because they snapped so much.
Right.
So we had to go back to the artist and we were like, hey, can we change them? So now instead of like, they looked really cool because there were these 4 daggers that sort of came off the body and were sort of floating in. They looked really great, but they were just a nightmare to print. So we had to move the daggers so that they were connected, like the tips were connected back up to the body. And, that way you've got all the extra support and you're not going to have that kind of issue. Right. Also with our Raven, the Raven option has really thin legs. So between the feet and up to the body, that little bit of leg there is exceptionally thin. And we were having problems where we'd be cleaning it and that bit just break. So what we had to do was ensure that the side of the Raven sort of connects a little bit to the head or the hair. That way you have additional support there or additional support in different places, or we just have to thicken the legs sometimes if there's nowhere that we can sort of connect it.
Right.
So it's designing your model in that way when you're sort of doing the touch-ups, keeping in mind how thin your pieces can be. Because like someone said, when you heat it up, you're also taking a little bit away from the structural integrity. Like if your bits are quite thin, it's now going to be sort of pliable when you touch it. So, it's just finding that balance between what you're printing and your cleanup process. So with this guy, there's still a couple of little bits on him. So just snap those off.
I honestly thought that this part of the process was going to be the one that takes the longest, just getting rid of those bits and pieces.
No. Hot water is your friend. They come off like butter once you do that.
Very cool.
So just drop it in again a little bit, warm up those pieces. Sort of happy with that, but it's very hard to see with the phone, but there's quite a few print pimples on here. And I've just realized I've only put one hole in it again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue that I face all the time. So I'll at least be able to show why this is bad. So from here, I just sand it down a bit. This bit, thankfully, isn't actually on display. No one's going to see this bit. It just means when it connects up, it might not be
flushed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can also see that I do have a little bit of deformation on my anchor point here. That just means I'm going to need to spend some time sort of digging that out so that it fits nicely. And that's probably from the way that I've orientated it.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, with this resin and this lighting, it is a little bit hard to see, but this is also an issue because of where I put the hole. So I can see that it's sort of deforming as it comes to the hole, and then once it gets to the hole, the pressure releases and it's fine.
Right.
So yeah, that's the thing about having multiple holes as it's printing along. So this piece probably won't be a reprint. I'll be able to save it because it's only the underneath. But you might have that kind of stuff happen under the chin here,
mm-hmm.
and that might lead you to reprinting.
Now, in something like this that you won't see the bottom bit anyway, wouldn't you just straight away create more holes just to be on the safe side, or you still is something else?
I could do it with the crab because the thickness wasn't a lot, but this one, sorry, I would do the holes when I'm putting it on the print,
mm-hmm.
And all of that. But if I was to add another hole here, this is actually really thick, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge to put a hole through. So for the crab, it was easy because he had thin walls, but this guy won't be. But I'll show you what I'm talking about with the whole pressure build-up inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to get a nice full syringe of isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to literally just inject it straight into the hole mm-hmm. that's there.
And so this is why you said that you might need an extra hole, like to push from one and then take it from. Okay.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be nice. But so yeah, I'll be able to show you. So I'm pushing it in, and now the pressure's built up so much mm-hmm. that it's just holding itself in there. So as I come back over, I can show you over here. It's dripping very slowly. Like it's only dripping one bit at a time. If I'm going like this, it starts to come out more, but that's just because, there's
only
no
one
extra pressure to alleviate. So I would want to put another hole in it. I just don't know if I can do it on camera now.
Right.
Sorry, because it's quite thick. So yeah, no, that's.
You didn't have one of those, what's the name of the rotor tools? Like those
I've got, what have I got?
I got the ones that you can use to kind of like clean jewelry and just sand little bits and pieces.
Oh, a little Dremel. Yeah,
one of those things.
That would.
Because I got one from Bunnings the other day, and it comes with a tiny little, like a drill bead and other things. So for these type of things, I guess it would be quite handy, and it's actually really good.
Give me one moment. I'm just grabbing it.
All good. In the meantime, guys, if you have more questions, just put it in the chat. This is like the time to answer. It's just letting you know, Ethan. It's more than 1 hour and 40 minutes mark now. So thank you so much for taking all this time. And it's I think everyone is very excited to see all these little tips and tricks and have an understanding of the entire workflow to get something printed, which sometimes is a little bit overwhelming. But seeing it, I mean, it does require practice, and it is tricky. But like seeing it kind of like live in the process is very, very powerful.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. I hope I'm not taking up too much of everyone's time.
Oh no, man! I'm happy to stay here. I'm just saying it because of you. I think there's a couple of questions here. Kurt is asking if you send prints to Canada.
Yeah. We ship internationally.
Cool.
So that's something without like becoming miniature stuff that we've just been able to do. We were very location sort of locked because of our handheld scanner. We had to physically scan your face, but we've now been able to process it that you just take a video of yourself, you upload that, and then we use reality capture and then some like hand sculpting by an artist to clean everything up and create a nice face sculpt.
Cool.
And then yes, we ship it internationally as well. So I've just powered this up. Let's see how we go.
No safety gloves, no safety goggles, just winging it.
Going for it, man.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was kind of like thinking that you were gonna do anyway. That's cool.
Yeah. As I say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Always use safety. But cool. That one's done. So that's good.
Sweet.
Wrong way. Cool. All right, there we go. I've got an extra hole in it. So now my pressure is not going to be as bad, and I'll actually be able to drop it back in, give it a run around because there's now bits of crap everywhere. But if I was to, can you see much? You probably
hang on, let me. Yep, there we go.
Cool. So I've now. Oh, you know what? I'll bring it over to this. Sorry, I'll bring it back over to my phone because you can see it better. Everything out of the way. So pop it in. Sorry. So that's the old hole. The new hole is on the other side. And now it can easily drain out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So now because it didn't have that ability before, the inside's going to be pretty dirty. So I'm just going to slam it full of stuff just over and over again. Once you've got enough in, when you're pushing it, it's all just going to shoot out like that. So just do that a whole lot. I mean, there's not too much you can do now that, because you've only got a few holes to play with. With our bigger busts, we have, a very large hole on the bottom. So you can get in there, you can easily clean all of that out. Like it's not a hassle. But for this, you gotta do as best as you can, and hope that you get the majority of it out. So,
let me just check the chat again. I think I missed a couple. Are you guys both based in Aussie base? Yeah, so I'm in Melbourne and Ethan is it Brisbane? Yeah. Or Gold Coast? Yeah.
Gold Coast.
Gold Coast.
Brisbane.
Yeah, Brisbane.
Same.
Yeah, so Ethan is the one with the crazy spiders and the crazy snakes and all of that. I'm relatively safe here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Let me just check. Oh, Paul. Hey, Paul. To have you here. I'm just going to do a little plug here as well for Paul because he's working on something and he's going to be in Monsterpalooza this year. And I've been following the stuff that he's doing, which is pretty awesome. So go and check Paul Beard on Instagram as well. He's another extra miler and he's going to be in Monsterpalooza. Anyway, going back to So yeah, Paul is asking if there is anywhere where he can follow you up, or like whatever you're up to, Instagram or something like that. If you go to the Become a Miniature link, Eman will be able to just share it again here on the chat. You can find all the socials and everything from Ethan. I'll be putting probably some Instagram stories or something from what we're doing today later, and I'll just pin him as well, so you can just grab it from there.
Yes. Sorry. So on my Become a Miniature site, we don't have like a nice direct happy link to find all of that, but there is an option. So in the face options, it says upload your face. That links you to our main website, and from there you can find all of our stuff. But honestly,
the last whole games.
Yeah. So it's just last whole games across all the different socials. On Facebook, Instagram. We don't have Twitter. We're trying to get a YouTube up and running at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, last whole games, you'll be able to find all of our stuff.
I'll just share the link as well. So yeah, I just found it. Here it is. So if you just scroll all the way to the bottom, you have those links in there, so you can follow in Insta and Facebook as well. Cody is asking, I'm not familiar with printing, but how do you go about getting them colored afterwards? Is just airbrushed or hand painted, or you get the color printed on?
So, we don't have a color printer, but they do exist. So, Pablo has a piece, his main guy for the extra mile, printed by Mamaki. Yep. And they are the color 3D printer guys. They're expensive printers. That's why we don't have one. Like the introductory is like,
it's crazy.
Don't quote me on it. It's like 80,000 US.
Nah, it's 120, I think.
It's more.
I had a look last time. Let me see if I can. While you do this, while you finish up with the cleaning, I can share those things as well.
Cool. So but yeah, I'll show you. So with our miniatures as well. We have I don't know if that's focusing.
Yeah, yep.
We have a hand painter who does all of our stuff as well. So I do
have one from last as well.
Oh yeah, from the robot.
Yeah, I'll share that bit as well, so you can have some time here to clean up your stuff. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Oh, my camera. So good.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So all of this stuff is printed by, you can see here as well, all of this stuff that you see here at the back, a little bit blurry, that's all printed by Ethan. So this is the resin that he's cleaning up at the moment, I believe, this sort of pink one.
Yeah.
Yep. So it has the holes. And then this is with whatever he's going to show you next. So it's already curated and painted with that sort of like nice matte gray finish. And I suppose after this point, you can go ahead and hand paint it. Now, the one that Lars, the artist that Ethan uses for his prints, did, which is absolutely phenomenal, did this one right here. So this is all hand painted. Again, Ethan printed it out. This is the one that he was referring to earlier on today, that he created the keys for the arms and the legs. But, it's pretty... You don't see it really. Now, if you look at here at the bottom, you kind of see the pink color of the resin, but Ethan painted it with a black one. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm it to be out of focus here. Yeah, so the paint that is on top of the pink resin is just a black paint, and that just sort of like helps to accentuate sort of like the metallic bits and other pieces. But I think that's something that the artist did. Not Ethan. Yeah, okay. But yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. This is all hand painted. He even has like some comparison between the actual 3D render that I created for this guy and the hand painted, and it's just like absolutely the same. And then the last one that I'm going to show you here, and then I'll get the camera back to Ethan. This is the Extra Mile character. I need to be... There we go. And this is a fantastic 3D print, but this is done in that Mimaki printer, that all of it that you can see here is printed in a single piece, a solid piece. So there's no holes or anything. See, it's a pretty heavy, solid piece, but the quality is fantastic, and it just prints in color straight away. Even the visor here from the mask, it's you won't be able to see, but it's like a pretty thin thing. So if you have a light or if you shine a light through it, let me just give you an example of that. You will be able to see it. Just put a light here. So that's a really nice thing. So it has like a really, really thin layer, and it's all printed in color. But as Ethan said, it is pretty expensive. I think I know one person that has bought one. That's the only person that I know. The rest is just, but you can send it over and they could print it out. Anyway, so I just wanted to cover that. Let me get out of video now.
Yeah, so the way their printer works is quite unique. It isn't actually like an upside down going into a vat of resin or anything. It is like a regular paper printer, honestly. So it does layer by layer, and
right.
it puts it down. Their supports are very different to these supports. So these ones are like construction pieces that go up that interlace and all that kind of stuff. Theirs is made out of a different resin that is like it's a solvent. So you can drop it into a special chemical concoction, whatever they do, and then that support just sort of dissipates and goes off of it, so you aren't left with any print pimples or anything like that. It is very, very cool. So yeah, each layer that goes down, it's a colored resin that drops down and layers up, and they just layer up until your piece is created. It's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool technology. The only thing I would say is the finish of it is a bit sandy, like it's an opaque thing, but they can print in different types of resin. So in the ZBrush Show Me, they had printed a few different things, even with translucent resin. It looks like just glass, basically.
That was hectic.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's very cool.
All right.
Cool. So I'm on to the last stage of my cleanup, and it's a little bit loud. So I'll explain what I'm doing, and then I'll mute myself because it's like exceptionally loud. So I've now got my extension lead to the compressor. Okay. And so I just got compressed air now, and I'm just going to dry it with compressed air. So I'll just mute myself quickly.
I can mute you if you want.
Okay, cool. Easy. Yeah, just mute me. So I'll also be putting it into the hole, and then it will, jettison out extra material from the other hole as well.
And now you're going to do it in the sink, so I can just put that camera on. Yep.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
All right. I'll mute you in a second. And yep. Cool. All right. You're muted now. All right. I think also, okay, here we are. Okay. So I guess while Ethan does this, what I would say is in the case, obviously, if you're like me, there's probably not the same space or the same setup that Ethan has, but I think if you came a little bit later to the stream, throughout the process, Ethan has been sharing some alternatives that are pretty useful for setting up your own more personal 3D printing station. And once we finish with this one, we'll see what he has to say about a more accessible for like a beginners sort of thing for this type of process, or like adding compressing air to it. I think he mentioned that he had like some compressed air cans as well. So yeah, cool. So good to go. Let me just unmute you. I cannot unmute you. I think you have to do it yourself. I just ask you to do it. Yeah, makes sense. And Riz is saying that he has some contacts in Canada and the Netherlands who owns Mimakis. So if anyone is interested, just reach out to Riz.
Cool. So yeah, so this is now all dry. Lovely and dry. Inside should be as dry as I can make them right now. There's probably still a little bit of stuff in there. But that's good. we'll quickly jump back over to the other camera just to show you why I use compressed air now. So this is a very old print, but you can see like in this area here is very shiny compared to the rest of it. And that's just having not cleaned it up after, so like not drying it off. Like this bit's super shiny. And that's like a water resin concoction that has sort of just gotten through the cracks, and it just dried up in there, which is a pain. So now I'll put both cameras on it. But we've now got our curing chamber. So it's a frozen mega cure. I probably don't need this one on now. So I got some crocodile teeth in there at the moment. So they're finished. Pull them out. But now your piece does need to cure again. So at the moment it's not tacky, so that means I've got the majority of the resin off of it. But it is still, it's not super hard. So I'll drop it in here. I'm going to set it for too long, about 4 minutes on either side. And now it's just going to try and get the camera down closer. It's just going to spin itself around and cure itself some more. So I'll let it do 4 minutes on facing that way. I'll then flip it over and I'll do 4 minutes facing the other way.
Okay. Would you, like, I was just thinking about when you put it in, if you had like some sort of like platform with a little wire or something, could you just put that wire through that hole that you did at the bottom, and that way you don't have to flip it? Like it just curates. I mean, it's kind of like, you know.
So what I'm doing now isn't going to cure the inside. But yes, some people do like to put little UV bulbs and then put it into and cure the inside. I've found with my pieces, I don't need to do that. As long as I've, jettisoned as much extra liquid out as I possibly can. And just because the walls are pretty thin compared to the rest of it, like there's quite a cavity in the middle there. Even if the resin that's on the inside is going to like cure slowly later, it's not going to crack my outside just because there's enough space on the inside. It's not going to do that. But if you had extremely thick walls and you didn't really do that, so it would you might want to do that.
Fair enough.
But so someone's asked, how long do you know to cure? Trial and error, mostly. Depends on your resin. Mostly depends on your resin and how thin your walls are, as someone else said. So I like to cure it for a bit here, and then usually before I ship it off or before I prime it, I like to leave it in ambient sunlight. So just not in direct sunlight, but like next to a window or something, just so it can slowly cure and get a little bit harder before I try and put, a paint coat on it or something.
Yeah. So Jaime said that he heard that if you leave it for too long, it can crack. Is that something that not happened to you? Like if you overcook it?
Yes. Yes. That can definitely happen. And so that's when I was talking about like trial and error. It just, if you put it on for too long, it definitely will crack. But like Kurt replied, depends on your thickness of your walls, because it's still that same thing of like, now you're curing your outside more than the inside is cured. And so there's just discrepancies with that, and that would just cause pressure buildup, and that's why cracks happen.
Okay. Is there like a visual indicator though? As in, because for instance, I remember back in the day, I used to do a lot of, that Fimo or like the Sculpty, the plasticine that you sort of bake and it gets hardened, like a porcelain thing. Yeah, so I used to do that, and I used to use a heat gun to bake it essentially and just to harden up. I know it's a completely different thing, but you could visually see the change between that more sort of oily and shiny type of plasticine and when you put the heat gun or in the oven, it is slowly sort of like make the whole thing very opaque and translucent. So there's like a visual thing that okay, this part is ready, and you just take it out.
Possibly with other resins. I know with mine, just because it's so pink, like it's harder to tell.
Okay.
You can definitely tell when you touch it. There's definitely a tell for that.
Right.
It not just becomes more harder, so it doesn't just become harder, but like all the tackiness that like, even though there's not a lot of tackiness that comes from it, like this feels completely different now. Like it's just so nice and smooth, and I can feel that this side is different to this side, which was face down.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd probably want to chuck it back in there. I won't chuck it in for another 4 minutes. I'd probably drop it down to 3 for this side, because it's going to overlap some of the other bit already.
And these are just UV lights, right?
Yeah. So it's just 2 strips, or a couple of strips of black light. So before we got a big chamber like this, we just had our own handmade one, which
so that's what I was going to say. You could probably make your own.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. So we had those UV. So I'll pull it back in. Sorry, excuse me. We had these, UV lights sort of just put together, and we had a styrofoam box, and we just had it down, and it was just putting it there for a while, flipping it over. So this is nice because it turns it around for you automatically. But this is fancy. You don't need fancy.
You can probably do some DIY as well in the same way, with a little rotating disc as well, if you want to.
Yeah.
This is the type of things that personally, if I were to get a little bit more into, if I had the time to do this, because it looks, awesome, I will probably try that myself, just to DIY it and see, just for the challenge. I think it would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely ways that you can do it without having to go down the route of buying the expensive stuff, for sure. So yeah, once that's done curing, I will. So for our miniature, you can either get it standard but not primed. You can get it primed, or you can get it painted.
So prime is that gray thing they used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit of exposed. There we go.
So this guy is just sanded down. So I'll use my phone, be way better. So our pink guy is just sanded down and just taken care of, being sanded, and haven't primed it, just made it nice, fully finished, so that if someone wants to paint it themselves, they can prime it themselves. And then we've got Michael Pavlovich here as his barbarian. And we've primed him. So that's just with a rattle can sprayer, which I've got back over here. So Vallejo grey primer, perfect. It is gorgeous. It's such a nice finish. So all of our smaller paint bottles as well that we use for airbrushing, have a little airbrushing station here. So they're.
Oh yeah, I think when I tried to do the paint myself for the first time, I used that Vallejo painting brand, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But they have like little buckets that were really cool.
Yeah, like the little ones like these.
Yeah.
So you use those for your airbrushing. But this guy is just, it's perfect. It sets within, like 5 to 10 minutes. It dries. It doesn't leave like big pools or anything. It's just, it's really lovely. So, awesome. All of the pieces we did for you, we primed with that. Like this guy as well.
Yeah. That's from Leo.
Yeah.
Leo Peñaranda.
Still got that one.
Nice.
Yeah. So we use that. We got we got this nice darker color that we use for some of our other stuff.
Nice. But that's something I was going to ask. What do you use that pink resin? It's just like a good one for general purposes, or is this? It's
just perfect. We like the brand the most. Because we have frozen printers, we use that's finished. we use the frozen resin,
Mhm.
and it's just dialed in perfectly. We get good results with it pretty much every single time. I just love using it. I used to like the grey one, but getting the grey one into Australia, just Amazon doesn't stock it, but they stock the pink one.
Right.
So we can get 6 to 8 bottles of resin delivered within a day, 1-day delivery, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
Whereas the grey one would have to order from America. So it's
It's availability as well.
Works and availability. Yeah. So I'll try and show you, but we've got our resin hoard down there, our stash.
Those are new, ready to go.
Yeah, yes, and we do
Nice.
test with other ones. Like we've got some Anycubic ones, some Soraya Tech. So the type of resin you use depends on a couple of things. Like unfortunately, the ivory resin, it's expensive. It's really good, but it's expensive. It's like when it's not on sale, it's like $70 for a kilo.
Right.
Which you go through that pretty quick.
Yeah,
But,
I remember when you printed out those prints. I mean, you did a lot of prints for the summit last year, but we went through a few bottles.
We went through a lot of bottles. I remember I've got a photo of it on my phone. It's just like the bin afterwards, and it's just filled with bottles of resin.
Yeah.
But so that's the process. So from there, I'd take this piece out, I'd prime it, and then I'd fit it in. So as I said, I can see that it's deformed a little bit on the bottom. So he's meant to fit perfectly into this piece, but he's not going to fit perfectly. Yeah. So
okay.
A little bit wobbly. So that just means I'm going to have to go in there,
sand it a bit.
Yeah, definitely take the edges of that side off, because I can see the way that it's deformed. So, but it's not going to be on display, so I can sort of go crazy fixing it to what I need, and then it will fit nicely in there.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. So we just got this one finished up. This design, nice, big, chunky boy.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
So let's say there's one more step, which obviously we don't have time to do that one, but that last step is just to prime it with that Vallejo paint, and you're good to go.
Pretty much, yeah. So now it's at a point that you could hand paint it however you want. So the primer doesn't just help with, putting like a nice finish on it. It will help you when you're painting and putting paints on top of it. I do find with this resin, when you're looking at it like this, it looks pretty good. Like I'm not seeing layer lines. I'm not seeing any print issues like that.
Right.
When you prime stuff, that's when you see print issues. Because it brings up all the little nitty gritty things that you didn't see before.
All the details,
Yeah. So there's like on Mike Pavlovich's, he's one on the head. It's probably not going to focus, but I mean, there's a little print bubble that's come up just from at the end. There was a little bit of air in there, and it just caused a little bubble. But when you're looking at it normally, it doesn't look like anything's wrong. You prime it, and it's like, oh crap.
Fair enough. And you would sand it, fix it, and then prime it again?
Yes. Yeah. So I'd probably fill that in with a little bit of resin, and then cure that as well over the top. Maybe sand it again, but it also, it depends how much of a visual thing it's going to be.
I was just thinking, if you're going to leave it just as a gray piece, you can just probably try to match it with a plasticine color and just fill it in easily.
Yeah. Green stuff. There's a thing called the green stuff, and a lot of people use that for filling resin pieces, 3D prints. That's a cool thing that's out there.
Alrighty. How are you doing with time? Do you reckon
I'm
completely
late for work, so it's whatever at this point. So I'm cool to keep chatting.
No, man, I don't want to take more of your time. I was just gonna say, if there's like some last minute questions, we can just throw it in the chat. See if we can answer them.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Let's have a look.
Oh, that's expensive for
$200.
Is that saying
Canadian?
it's labs though? That's pretty much the same as Aussie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people say that. For isopropyl alcohol, I don't believe it does. I'd be more scared of having metho in there for the sonic. But also just keeping an eye on it. I mean, you're only having it in there for 3 minutes max. So just keep an eye on it.
Just for the recording, Reese was asking that, what do you think of people saying that if the sonic vibration can ignite alcohol? So that's what Ethan was answering.
And a 3-liter one, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Jindasu, that's cool.
Yeah, Jindasu, that would probably an easy way to get that. Cool. All right, so no more questions, guys. All good to go.
There's a little one about DIY tips. Thing I would say is just get some extra tools. So, sandpaper, ensure you've got cleaning materials around. I love these little clippers and some little like jewelry pincers. They're perfect. And then do you have any issues with the 8K plate with the holes in it? No, not really. Just depends. Yeah, so I use a raft for everything. It just makes taking off everything way easier. So, with a nicely, it's full of resin. With a nicely edged scraper, you're able to get under it easily. So there are rafts that have, it's going to be pretty hard to see, but they go flat and then on the edges they come up a little bit. And that means you can easily get a scraper in there under and pop it up.
Right.
So yeah, for definitely for all of our stuff, we use like a full support raft. Or it's actually just the fact that all the supports are so close to each other, they basically make a raft. So yeah.
Just trial and error with different tools, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. So I like with this piece, it's a full, it's a full base. That's just because we have so many supports on it that it makes a full base. So I mean, you can tell it to put a full raft on it and then it just builds supports off of that. You can do that as well. But just because we like to use auto supports and 40-50% gives you a full base that just pops off all at the same time.
Fantastic. Cool, man. All right. So I'm gonna leave it there because I know you gotta go. I really appreciate you taking the time. It has been very instructional and very good to see the whole process. It certainly for me, it sort of like helps demystify the whole thing, and hopefully for anyone that is new to 3D printing as well, it would be, I think it's been great. So thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time. And so we're gonna have this hopefully. The recording has been working, so hopefully it didn't make too much of an issue when my computer froze. But we're gonna try to put that in the community, and I will share more of the Ethan links and everything. So if you have questions for him, I'm sure he can answer them afterwards in the offline. So thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, have good. A good one. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries, man. Thank you so much. And we'll probably we'll see how we go, but hopefully we can have you again in somehow some kind of format.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be great.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right,
see you guys.
Everyone.
See you, everyone. It's been great. Bye.